I died on a cold, sterile hospital bed, clutching a restraining order my own daughter had filed against me. She stood in the doorway, hand in hand with her father's mistress, watching me take my last breath with a look of absolute disgust. I had sacrificed my youth, my career, and my sanity for Lily, only for her to call me a toxic burden on the witness stand. But then I opened my eyes. The beeping monitors dissolved into the mahogany panels of my lawyer's office. It was exactly 8 years earlier, the day of the divorce mediation. This time, I wouldn't fight. I would hand them the rope, and I would watch them hang themselves. The last sensation I remembered was the suffocating weight in my chest, a physical manifestation of a broken heart giving out. In my previous life, the year was 2034. I was 45, bankrupt, emotionally hollowed out, and dying of stress-induced cardiomyopathy in a state-run facility. My ex-husband, David, and his new wife, Rachel, had successfully brainwashed my daughter, Lily, turning her into a weapon against me. They drained my accounts through endless, frivolous custody litigations that I stubbornly fought because I believed a mother should never give up on her child. I fought until I had nothing left. Not my PR agency, not my home, not my health. Lily's final words to me, delivered through a smirk that mirrored her father's, echoed in the void. "You never let me breathe, Mom. Rachel actually loves me. You're just obsessed with controlling us. I don't want you at my graduation. I don't want you in my life." Then the darkness came, and then the smell of old leather, polished wood, and stale black coffee hit my nostrils like a physical blow. I gasped, my hands flying to my chest. No hospital gown, no IV drips. I was wearing my navy blue Armani suit, the one I had worn to my divorce mediation. I looked down at my hands. They weren't thin and bruised with needle marks. They were steady, adorned with a fresh French manicure. "Sarah, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost." I snapped my head up. Sitting across from me was Arthur Pendleton, my divorce attorney. He looked a decade younger than the last time I saw him, back when I couldn't afford his retainer anymore. I glanced at the heavy gold clock on his desk. June 14th, 2026. My breath hitched. I squeezed my eyes shut and dug my manicured nails into my palms until sharp pain flared. I wasn't dreaming. The universe, in some twisted stroke of mercy, had hit the reset button. I was back on the exact day my life had originally derailed, the day we were meant to hammer out the custody and asset division. In my past life, this was the day I had cried, begged, and ultimately surrendered the equity in our marital home and a massive chunk of my business just to secure 50-50 custody of Lily. A custody arrangement David would systematically chip away at over the next 8 years by playing the fun dad while I played the exhausted disciplinarian. "Sarah?" Arthur prompted again, his brow furrowing with concern. "They'll be here in 5 minutes. Are you ready for this? I know David's attorney is going to push for primary custody. We need to stand our ground. We can use his affair with Rachel as leverage for the house." "No," I interrupted, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. It wasn't the trembling, hysterical voice of a betrayed wife. It was ice cold. It was the voice of a ghost who had already seen the end of the movie. "No?" Arthur blinked, confused. "Sarah, we discussed this. If we don't fight for the house, let him have it," I said, sitting up straight, rolling my shoulders back. The phantom weight on my chest was gone. "I want to restructure our demands, Arthur, immediately, before they walk through that door." Arthur opened his notepad, looking deeply alarmed. Okay, what are you thinking? David wants the 5-bedroom house in the suburbs. He gets it, along with the mortgage. I want full ownership of Vanguard PR. He gets zero equity. I keep my personal investment portfolios. He keeps his. We walk away with our own debts. Arthur's pen hovered over the paper. Sarah, the equity in that house is substantial, but Vanguard is your baby. Protecting it is smart. However, what about Lily? If you concede the house, I concede custody too, I said. The words tasted like copper in my mouth, a visceral rejection of every maternal instinct society had drilled into me. But I remembered the restraining order. I remembered dying alone. David gets sole physical and legal custody. I will take standard visitation, which I reserve the right to exercise at my discretion. No child support from my end, considering I am forfeiting my half of the home's equity to provide a stable environment for her. Arthur dropped his pen. It clattered loudly on the mahogany desk. Sarah, are you out of your mind? You've spent the last month agonizing over losing Lily. You're a wonderful mother. David is a narcissist who barely knows what grade she's in. You can't just hand over your 10-year-old daughter. I am not handing her over, Arthur. I am giving her exactly what she wants, I replied, my eyes fixed on the heavy oak door of the conference room. And I am saving my own life. 10 minutes later, the door swung open. David walked in, radiating unearned confidence, wearing a tailored suit paid for by my agency's dividends. Right behind him, holding his arm like it was a life preserver, was Rachel. She was 24, wide-eyed, and aggressively blonde, playing the part of the fragile damsel who had just happened to fall in love with a married man. And then, stepping out from behind Rachel, was Lily. My heart did a painful stutter. She was 10 years old again. Pigtails, a designer denim jacket, and a sullen expression. In my past life, seeing her brought into a mediation room had broken me. I had screamed at David for weaponizing our child. This time, I just watched her. I brought Lily, David announced smoothly, taking a seat opposite me. His lawyer, a shark named Gregory Vance, took the seat next to him. Since she's old enough to have a voice in where she lives, I felt it was important she be here to express her preferences. Gregory opened his briefcase. My client is prepared to offer standard every other weekend visitation, provided Sarah vacates the family home by the end of the month and agrees to a 60-40 split of the Vanguard PR valuation. Arthur shifted uncomfortably next to me, ready to launch into the defensive strategy we had planned yesterday. I placed a hand gently over his wrist, stopping him. Lily, I said quietly, leaning forward. My daughter looked at me. Her blue eyes, so much like her father's, held a mixture of defiance and rehearsed lines. What? She muttered. Don't speak to your mother like that. David chided softly, though the smirk on his face told a different story. He loved this. He loved that she was siding with him. Where do you want to live, Lily? I asked, my tone entirely neutral. Lily glanced at Rachel, who gave her a sickeningly sweet, encouraging nod. I want to live with Dad and Rachel, Lily said, her little voice echoing in the tense room. You're always working, Mom. You always make me do homework, and you yell when my room is messy. Dad lets me stay up, and Rachel says we can get a golden retriever puppy if I live with them. You said dogs are too much work. In my past life, I had burst into tears. I had explained that I worked to pay for her elite private school, her gymnastics, her organic food. I had begged her to understand that rules were love. Today, I just nodded slowly. I see. I turned my gaze to David, whose smirk was now a full-blown, victorious grin. He thought he had broken me. He thought the negotiation was over, that I would now surrender everything just to stay in her life. "Arthur," I said, not breaking eye contact with David. "Draft the addendum." Gregory, David's lawyer, leaned forward. "We have the paperwork right here, Sarah. If you're ready to sign over the house and discuss the business valuation—" "There will be no business valuation," I interrupted, my voice slicing through the room like a scalpel. "David gets the house, all the equity. I walk away from the mortgage." David's eyebrows shot up. Rachel let out a tiny, excited gasp. "In exchange," I continued, "I retain 100% of Vanguard PR. My personal investments remain mine. And, as Lily has so eloquently stated her preference, I am granting David full, sole, legal and physical custody." The silence in the room was absolute. It was so quiet, I could hear the faint hum of the air conditioning unit. David's smile vanished. "What?" "You heard me," I said smoothly. "You want to be the primary parent, David? Congratulations. You win, you get the house, and you get the child. I will take my business and leave. I won't pay child support, as my forfeiture of the house's equity more than covers my financial obligation for her upbringing. I'll take standard visitation, to be used at my discretion." Lily stared at me, her mouth slightly open. She had expected a fight. She had been prepped for a tearful mother begging her to stay. My indifference was entirely off script. You don't want me to live with you?" she asked, a flicker of genuine confusion crossing her face. "You said you wanted to live with your dad and Rachel," I replied calmly. "I am respecting your wishes, Lily. You're getting exactly what you asked for." "Wait, hold on," David stammered, his facade cracking. "You're just giving up? You're a mother. You can't just abandon your child." "I'm not abandoning her. I'm placing her in the care of her loving father and his capable new partner," I said, gesturing to Rachel, who was suddenly looking a lot less eager. "You two have built a wonderful bond. I wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. Plus, a golden retriever puppy sounds lovely." Gregory, the opposing lawyer, quickly began doing mental math. "David, this is actually incredibly favorable. You get the primary asset, the house, and sole custody without a protracted court battle." David looked trapped. He wanted the win, he wanted the money, but he had never actually intended to be a full-time father. He used Lily as a prop for his ego. "David, sign it," Rachel whispered, tugging on his sleeve. She was blinded by the prospect of getting the 5-bedroom mansion all to herself. She had no idea what it actually cost to run that house or to raise Lily. Arthur quickly drafted the new terms. My hand didn't shake once as I signed the papers. I signed away my home. I signed away my legal right to make decisions for the daughter who would, in another timeline, leave me to die alone. As I stood up to leave, I looked at the three of them. A newly formed family, standing on a foundation of my money and their deceit. "Enjoy the house, David," I said, buttoning my suit jacket. "The property taxes are due in September?" Moving out took exactly 3 days. I didn't take the furniture. I let Rachel have it all. I packed my clothes, my personal documents, and my dignity into a sleek, furnished penthouse downtown, a 5-minute walk from Vanguard PR. For the first 2 weeks, it was heaven. I slept 8 hours a night. I drank wine on my balcony overlooking the city skyline. I threw myself into my agency, landing 2 massive corporate accounts that I had previously been too exhausted to pitch. I felt 20 years younger. The shadow of my impending, miserable death had lifted. For David, Rachel, and Lily, the first 2 weeks were a honeymoon. I saw it on Instagram. David posted photos of them at the zoo, eating giant sundaes for dinner, and yes, picking out a golden retriever puppy. The captions were dripping with passive aggression. Finally, a toxic-free weekend with my girls. And real parenting is about presence, not pressure. I liked the photos from my burner account and sipped my espresso. The honeymoon phase always has an expiration date. The first crack in their perfect facade appeared on the third Tuesday of July. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from David. I let it ring 4 times before answering. Sarah speaking. Did you cancel the autopay on Lily's Gymnastics Academy? David demanded, bypassing any greeting. He sounded out of breath. Of course I did, I replied, pulling up a spreadsheet on my laptop. I no longer have legal custody, nor do I have financial obligation for her extracurriculars. That was outlined in the mediation agreement you signed. They just tried to charge my card $4,000 for the elite summer camp, he yelled. Sarah, you always pay for gymnastics. I used to, I corrected gently. But as the sole custodial parent, her expenses are now your responsibility. You wanted to be the primary caregiver, David. Caregiving costs money. I took the house. I didn't get child support. You got $500,000 in equity, David. If you're short on liquid cash, perhaps you should take out a second mortgage. Or ask Rachel to pitch in. Rachel doesn't work. She's taking care of Lily. Then it sounds like you have everything figured out, I said sweetly. Have a great day, David. I hung up and blocked his number. He could email me if it was a true emergency. The truth was, David made a decent salary as a regional sales manager, but he lived vastly beyond his means. He drove a leased Porsche, wore tailored suits, and bought expensive watches. For 10 years, my PR agency had funded our lifestyle, paid the mortgage, and covered Lily's exorbitant private school tuition. David had just inherited a massive, expensive house and a high-maintenance child without the income to support either. By August, the reality of full-time parenting was clearly eroding Rachel's sanity. I decided to exercise my visitation rights for a Saturday afternoon lunch. I drove to the suburbs and pulled up to my old house. The lawn, previously manicured by a landscaping service I paid for, was overgrown. The golden retriever puppy was digging a massive hole in the front flower bed. When Rachel opened the door, she looked like she had aged 5 years. She was wearing sweatpants, her roots were showing, and she had dark circles under her eyes. The house smelled faintly of dog urine and burnt toast. Sarah, she mumbled, looking defensively at my pristine silk blouse and designer sunglasses. Lily's getting ready. Take your time, I said, stepping into the foyer. Mom! Lily came bounding down the stairs. She stopped halfway, taking me in. I looked rested, wealthy, and completely unbothered. She looked messy. Her uniform for Monday was crumpled on the banister, and she had a scowl on her face. Ready for lunch? I asked. Can we go to that fancy sushi place? Lily asked, pushing past Rachel without acknowledging her. Sure, I said. As we walked to my car, I heard Rachel snap at David inside the house. I told you to take the dog out. I've been cleaning up after your kid all morning. I am not cleaning up after the dog, too. At lunch, Lily picked at her expensive sushi rolls. She looked miserable. How is the new arrangement going, sweetheart? I asked, taking a delicate sip of my sparkling water. Is the puppy fun? Lily frowned, poking a piece of tuna with her chopstick. Max chews everything. He ruined my favorite shoes, and Rachel is always yelling now. She's not fun anymore. Oh? I thought she let you stay up late and skip your chores? She does, but then the house gets gross, and Dad yells at her, and then she yells at me, Lily complained. And Dad said I can't go to the elite gymnastics camp this summer because it's too expensive. Mom, you have to pay for it. All my friends are going. In my past life, I would have caved. I would have worked 80 hours a week to write that $4,000 check just to see her smile, only for her to resent me for not being around to watch her practice. Today, I looked at my 10-year-old daughter, the girl who would one day stand in a courtroom and call me a toxic burden, and gave her a polite, apologetic smile. I'm sorry, Lily, but your father and I agreed that he handles your finances now. You'll have to ask him to budget for it. But he said you have all the money, she whined, her voice pitching up into a bratty register. You're just being mean on purpose. You're trying to ruin my life. I set down my chopsticks, my expression hardening just enough to make her stop talking. Lily, I said quietly, the authority in my voice leaving no room for argument. You chose to live with your father. You chose Rachel. You wanted the funhouse with no rules. You have it. But you do not get to disrespect me. And you do not get to demand my money when you clearly stated you preferred their company over mine. She stared at me, her eyes welling with tears. She was waiting for me to apologize, to backtrack, to pull her into a hug and promise her the world. Instead, I signaled the waiter. Check, please. As I dropped Lily back off at the chaotic, loud house, I watched her trudge up the driveway. David was on the porch, holding a trash bag, looking utterly exhausted. Rachel was glaring at him through the front window. The karmic wheel had officially started turning, and I was going to enjoy every single second of the ride. By September, the crisp autumn air brought with it the unmistakable scent of impending financial ruin for my ex-husband. In my previous life, September was the month I dreaded most. It was the month the massive property tax bill for our 5-bedroom suburban estate was due, along with the fall semester tuition for Lily's elite private school, Oak Ridge Academy. Back then, I had liquidated a portion of my retirement savings to cover it, terrified of disrupting Lily's life, while David used his bonus to upgrade his leased Porsche. This time, I spent September in Milan. I had secured a massive contract with Victoria Sterling, the notoriously demanding CEO of a rising European tech conglomerate. Without the soul-crushing weight of David's financial demands and Lily's constant complaints, my mind was sharp. I was sleeping well, eating well, and pitching with a feral confidence that Victoria instantly respected. She signed a 2-year retainer with Vanguard PR that effectively doubled my agency's annual revenue. I was sipping an Aperol Spritz in a piazza overlooking the Duomo when my phone buzzed. It was an email from David. Subject: Urgent. Property taxes and Oak Ridge, Sarah. We have a serious problem. The county just sent the tax assessment. It's $18,000. Also, Oak Ridge is threatening to unenroll Lily if the fall tuition isn't paid by Friday. I know we agreed I'd handle her day to day, but you need to wire me $30,000 immediately. Lily is your daughter. You can't let her lose her home and her school. I read the email twice, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. He wasn't asking. He was demanding. He still operated under the delusion that I was his personal ATM, bound by a guilt he could easily manipulate. I set my drink down and typed my reply on my phone, my thumbs moving with precise, deliberate taps. Urgent. Property taxes and Oak Ridge. David, congratulations on home ownership. As the sole owner of the property, the taxes are entirely your responsibility. Regarding Oak Ridge, you are Lily's sole legal and physical custodian. Her educational expenses fall entirely on you, as outlined in Section 4, Paragraph B of our mediation agreement. I strongly suggest you look into a home equity line of credit, or ask Rachel to secure employment. Do not contact me regarding your financial obligations again. Best, Sarah. I hit send, slipped my phone back into my Prada tote, and ordered another spritz. When I returned to the States 2 weeks later, the fallout was already in motion. Through mutual acquaintances, because suburban gossip spreads faster than a wildfire, I learned that David had indeed tried to get a loan against the house. But because he was already over-leveraged with his car and credit card debt, he was denied. He was forced to sell his beloved Porsche and buy a used, reliable Honda sedan. The humiliation of pulling up to his golf club in a 10-year-old sensible car must have been agonizing for a narcissist of his caliber. But the real crisis was brewing at home. Rachel, who had envisioned a life of country club lunches and spa days, was suddenly trapped in a sprawling house she couldn't afford to heat properly, cleaning up after a massive, untrained golden retriever and an increasingly rebellious 10-year-old. October arrived, bringing a cold front and a phone call I had been anticipating. I was sitting in my sleek, glass-walled office, reviewing a marketing deck, when my assistant buzzed in. Sarah, I have Principal Harrison from Oak Ridge Academy on line 2. He says it's urgent regarding Lily. I paused. In my past life, a call from Principal Harrison would have sent me into a panic attack. I would have dropped everything, canceled client meetings, and rushed to the school, groveling and apologizing for whatever Lily had done. Put him through, I said smoothly. Sarah! Principal Harrison's voice was tight with exasperation. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but we are having severe behavioral issues with Lily. She's been acting out in class, her homework hasn't been turned in for 3 weeks, and today, she was caught screaming profanities at another student in the cafeteria. We've tried calling David, but his voicemail is full. Mr. Harrison, I appreciate you reaching out, I replied, my voice calm and professional. However, I need to update your records. I no longer have legal or physical custody of Lily. David holds sole custody and educational decision-making rights. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. Excuse me? Sole custody? Yes. Her stepmother, Rachel, is also heavily involved in her daily care. I cannot authorize any disciplinary actions, nor can I come to pick her up. You will need to keep trying David, or perhaps send an emergency contact to his workplace. But she's your daughter, Harrison stammered, clearly thrown by my utter lack of panic. She is. And her father fought very hard to be her primary parent. I said firmly, Please remove me as the primary contact, Mr. Harrison. Good luck. I hung up. The detachment felt incredible. It was a muscle I was building, rep by rep, replacing the crippling codependency that had literally killed me. Later that evening, the reality of that phone call exploded at David's house. I pieced it together later through Lily's hysterical voicemails, which I saved but did not immediately answer. Unable to reach David, the school had called Rachel. Rachel had to leave a Botox consultation, which she was trying to pay for with a maxed-out credit card, to go pick up a screaming, suspended Lily. When they got home, the golden retriever Max, having been locked inside for 6 hours without a walk, had destroyed Rachel's prized possession. A vintage Chanel flap bag David had bought her during their affair to buy her silence. Rachel snapped, I am not your maid! Rachel had screamed at Lily, the thin veneer of the cool, fun stepmom completely shattering. You are a spoiled, ungrateful brat, and this dog is a menace. I didn't sign up for this. You're not my real mom, Lily had shrieked back, falling back on the classic preteen defense. My dad has all the money. He bought you that bag, and he can buy you another one. You're just a gold digger. The words were an echo of things Lily had heard my friends whisper during the divorce, but hearing them weaponized by the child Rachel had helped alienate from me was poetic justice. When David finally came home, exhausted and stressed about money, he walked into a war zone. Rachel was packing a suitcase, threatening to move into her sister's cramped apartment, and Lily was locked in her room, refusing to come out. The funhouse had officially become a prison. The climax of their autumn misery arrived in mid-November. David had managed to string Oak Ridge Academy along for 2 months with partial payments and empty promises. But private schools run on rigid budgets, and their patience was finite. I was in the lobby of Vanguard PR, chatting with my head of security, a towering ex-Marine named Brian, when the elevator doors chimed open. David stormed into the reception area. He looked terrible. His tailored suit hung loosely on him, his eyes were bloodshot, and his trademark arrogance had been replaced by a frantic, feral desperation. "Sarah," he barked, marching past the receptionist. Brian stepped smoothly into his path, crossing his massive arms. "Can I help you, sir?" "Get out of my way! I need to speak to my ex-wife," David snarled, trying to sidestep him. Brian didn't budge an inch. "It's fine, Brian," I said, stepping forward but maintaining a safe distance. "What do you want, David? You don't have an appointment." "They kicked her out," David hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "Oak Ridge! They pulled Lily out of her homeroom this morning, made her pack her locker, and told her she couldn't return until the $25,000 balance was cleared. Do you have any idea how humiliated she is?" "I imagine it's incredibly embarrassing," I said, my tone as mild as if we were discussing the weather. "It's a shame you didn't budget for her tuition." "Are you insane?" David yelled, drawing the attention of several employees. "She is your flesh and blood. You have millions in your accounts. I know you landed the Sterling contract. You're just going to let your daughter be thrown into the public school system?" "The local public school is perfectly adequate," I replied, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from my skirt. "And yes, I do have the money, because I work 70 hours a week to earn it. Money that, until recently, you felt entitled to spend on your mistress. Rachel is my wife, and Lily is your legal responsibility," I shot back, my voice finally dropping into a hard, cold register that made David flinch. "You sat in that mediation room and smugly took my home and my child because you wanted to punish me. You wanted to play house with Rachel and be the hero? Well, heroes have to pay the bills, David. You wanted her? You afford her." "I will take you back to court," he threatened, spitting the words out. "I will sue you for child support." "Go ahead," I smiled. "I'll remind the judge that you willfully accepted $500,000 in home equity in lieu of support, which you have since squandered. Any decent judge will laugh you out of the courtroom. Now, leave my office before Brian physically removes you." David stared at me, searching my eyes for the weak, exhausted woman he had bullied for a decade. He found nothing but ice. He turned on his heel and stormed out, the elevator doors shutting on his defeated face. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Lily. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. "Hello, Lily." "Mom?" She was sobbing, deep, heaving, chest-racking sobs. "Mom, please, you have to come get me, please." I closed my eyes. For a fraction of a second, the ghost of my past life, the mother who had died of a broken heart, twitched in my chest. But then I remembered the restraining order. I remembered her looking at me with pure disgust. "What's wrong?" I asked calmly. "They kicked me out of Oak Ridge. Everyone saw. Chloe and Harper were laughing at me, and Dad is screaming at Rachel, and Rachel locked herself in the bathroom, and the house is so messy, and I hate it here." She wailed. "I want to come home, Mom. I want my old room back. I'll do my chores, I promise. Just come get me." "I can't do that, Lily." Her crying hitched. "Why not? You're my mom." "Because you don't have a room at my apartment," I stated gently but firmly. "Because in the mediation room, I asked you where you wanted to live, and you chose your father and Rachel. You said I was too strict. You said they were fun. I respected your choice." "I was stupid. I was just mad because you took my iPad away that one time. Dad promised me it would be like a vacation every day." "Well, now you know that actions have consequences," I said. "Your father is your guardian. He is in charge of your schooling and your living situation. You need to talk to him about this." "He doesn't have any money," she screamed, desperation making her voice shrill. "Rachel said we might have to sell the house. Mom, please." "I have to get back to work, Lily. I hope your first day at the new school goes well." I hung up the phone and placed it face down on my desk. I didn't cry. I didn't feel guilty. I felt an overwhelming, profound sense of peace. The tumor had been excised. It was painful, and it was messy, but the healing had finally begun. And for them, the nightmare was only just starting. In my previous life, the holiday season was a marathon of exhaustive, thankless labor. I would spend weeks curating the perfect Thanksgiving dinner, fighting crowds to secure the exact gifts Lily had circled in catalogs, and single-handedly decorating our sprawling suburban home. David would inevitably emerge from his den just as the guests arrived, pouring himself a scotch and accepting all the compliments on the beautiful home he provided. Lily would tear through her presents on Christmas morning, complain if the color of her new iPhone was slightly off, and retreat to her room while I spent 8 hours cleaning up the wrapping paper and roasting a prime rib. This year, the script was entirely rewritten. As November rolled in, bringing a bitter chill to the city, I finalized a massive merger deal for Vanguard PR. We were facilitating the public relations strategy for Lumina Tech's acquisition by the Omnicom Group, a multi-million-dollar contract that required my complete focus. I spent Thanksgiving week in Vienna, Austria, attending a global communications summit. I ate Wiener Schnitzel in a centuries-old tavern, drank mulled wine at the Christkindlmarkt, and didn't cook a single thing. Back in the States, the walls were rapidly closing in on David. The $18,000 property tax bill had gone unpaid, triggering a notice of default from Wells Fargo. David had desperately tried to put the house on the market, but the suburban real estate bubble had cooled. Worse, the house itself was no longer the pristine showpiece I had maintained. Without my income paying for the weekly housekeeping service, the landscapers, and the pool boy, the property had deteriorated with shocking speed. Through the grapevine, specifically my former neighbor, a ruthless real estate agent named Brenda, I learned that David had listed the house for $1.2 million. He had received exactly 0 offers. The golden retriever, Max, had chewed the baseboards in the living room to splinters. The carpets were stained with dog urine, and the once manicured lawn looked like an abandoned lot. Prospective buyers took one look at the deferred maintenance and walked right back out the door. The real breaking point, however, wasn't the house. It was Rachel. Rachel had grown up middle class, but she possessed the ferocious entitlement of someone who believed she was destined for high society simply because she was young and conventionally attractive. She had married David expecting a life subsidized by my hard work. She wanted country club memberships, spontaneous trips to Tulum, and a closet full of designer bags. Instead, she found herself trapped in a freezing, drafty house because David was keeping the thermostat at 60 degrees to save on utility bills. She was constantly scrubbing floors, cooking cheap pasta dinners, and acting as a chauffeur for a hostile, resentful 10-year-old. The inevitable explosion happened 3 days before Christmas. I was sitting in my penthouse, wrapping a beautiful vintage edition of Jane Eyre that I had purchased for Lily. It was a thoughtful gift, not an extravagant one. I had established a new boundary. I was her mother, not her financier. My phone vibrated on the marble island. It was an unknown number, but the area code was local. I answered on the third ring. "Sarah?" The voice was shaky, nasal, and immediately recognizable. It was Rachel. I paused, setting down my ribbon. "Hello, Rachel. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I don't know who else to call," she sobbed, the sound completely devoid of her usual smugness. "David took my car. Well, the Honda. He said he needed it for work, but I know he went to a bar. Lily is screaming at me because I told her she isn't getting the new MacBook Pro for Christmas. The heater is broken, Sarah. It's 55 degrees in this house, and David says we can't afford the emergency repair fee." I leaned against the counter, tracing the rim of my wine glass. "I'm not sure why you are telling me this, Rachel. You are the woman of the house now. Surely you can manage a broken furnace." "There's no money!" she shrieked, the desperation clawing its way out of her throat. "He told me you left him with $500,000 in equity. He swore we were rich, but he spent $50,000 paying off his stupid Porsche lease before he sold it. He blew $20,000 on a trip to Cabo for us last spring, and the rest, I don't even know where it went. His credit cards are maxed out. Wells Fargo sent a foreclosure warning." "Math was never David's strong suit," I replied coolly. "He likes the appearance of wealth, not the discipline it takes to build it. But again, Rachel, this is a conversation you need to have with your husband." "I'm leaving him," she blurted out. "I can't do this anymore. I'm 24 years old. I'm supposed to be enjoying my life, not playing maid to a broke loser and a bratty kid who hates me. I called an Uber. I'm going to my sister's place in Chicago." "I see. I'm leaving Lily here. I just thought, as her mother, you should know she'll be alone until David gets back from whatever bar he's hiding in." A cold fury flickered in my chest, not at Rachel, but at David for abandoning his child to go drink his failures away. But I remembered the rules of my new life. I remembered the oxygen mask principle. Put your own on first. "Thank you for the notification, Rachel," I said evenly. "Have a safe flight to Chicago." I hung up the phone. I didn't rush to my car. I didn't drive to the suburbs in a panic. Instead, I called the local police precinct and requested a standard welfare check at my former address, stating that a 10-year-old had been left entirely unsupervised in a home without adequate heating. Let David explain that to the authorities. Later that night, the police report confirmed my suspicions. Officers arrived to find Lily huddled in a blanket, shivering, while Max the dog tore up a couch cushion. They had to call David, pulling him out of a downtown pub, to come home and face a child endangerment warning. Rachel was gone. The funhouse had officially burned down, and David was left standing in the ashes, holding the match. January arrived with the brutality of a sledgehammer. The holidays had utterly broken David's facade. With Rachel gone, he had no one to blame for the messy house, the lack of groceries, or Lily's increasingly terrible attitude. He was forced to leave work early to pick Lily up from her new, overcrowded public school, Harrison Heights, which severely impacted his sales quotas. Desperation breeds audacity. In the second week of February, I was served with a thick stack of legal documents, David was petitioning the family court for an emergency modification of custody and a retroactive child support order. His claims were laughable but malicious. The paperwork alleged that I had abandoned my duties as a mother, that my financial success constituted a substantial change in circumstances, and that I should be ordered to pay him $12,000 a month in child support, plus cover Oak Ridge Academy's back tuition, so he could maintain Lily's accustomed standard of living. He also requested that I be forced to take physical custody of Lily every weekend and 3 days during the week, effectively demanding I become his unpaid babysitter while he kept the title of primary custodian. I immediately called Arthur Pendleton. "He's drowning, Sarah," Arthur said over the phone, reviewing the files. "The audacity is staggering, but courts generally favor the child's financial stability. We need to be prepared. If he proves he is completely insolvent, a judge might force you to pay simply because Lily is suffering." "I won't give him a single dime," I said, my voice hardening. "He had his golden parachute. I want to completely expose his financial mismanagement. Subpoena all of his bank records from the day the mediation agreement was signed. Every credit card, every ATM withdrawal, every Venmo transaction. I want the court to see exactly what he did with Lily's financial stability." Our court date was set for a rainy Tuesday in early March. We were assigned to Judge Margaret Campbell, a notoriously no-nonsense magistrate known for her sharp intellect and zero tolerance for parental theatrics. I arrived at the courthouse wearing a tailored charcoal Alexander McQueen suit. I looked like a woman who commanded boardrooms, completely unfazed by the miserable man sitting across the aisle. David looked 10 years older. He had gained weight, his suit was wrinkled, and the bags under his eyes were bruised purple. He had hired a cheap, overworked attorney named Richard Boyle, whose briefcase looked like it was held together by duct tape. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Campbell," the bailiff announced. Judge Campbell took her seat, adjusted her glasses, and glared at the files in front of her. "All right. I have read the petitioner's motion for modification of support and custody. Mr. Boyle, your client is asking for a rather astronomical sum of $12,000 a month from a mother who surrendered all physical and legal custody less than a year ago. Explain." Richard Boyle stood up, clearing his throat nervously. "Your Honor, the circumstances have drastically changed. The mother, Ms. Sarah, my client's ex-wife, has seen a massive increase in her business revenue. Meanwhile, my client is struggling to maintain the family home and the child's private education. We believe the child is entitled to share in the mother's wealth." "Mr. Pendleton?" the judge prompted, turning to Arthur. Arthur stood, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, we reject this petition entirely. The respondent, my client, entered into a binding mediation agreement 9 months ago. In that agreement, she voluntarily surrendered her half of the marital home's equity, a sum of precisely $520,000, specifically in lieu of future child support. The petitioner willingly accepted this lump sum." "Your Honor, that money is gone!" David blurted out from his table, unable to contain himself. "The house needs repairs. The taxes were reassessed. It's not my fault." "Silence, Mr. David," Judge Campbell snapped, her gavel hovering. "Speak through your attorney." She turned back to Arthur. "Mr. Pendleton, where did the $500,000 go? Surely a house does not consume that much liquidity in 9 months without a major renovation." "I have the forensic accounting right here, Your Honor," Arthur said smoothly, handing a thick binder to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. "Exhibit A details Mr. David's expenditures since June. You will find a $50,000 lump sum payment to Portia Financial Services. You will find $22,000 spent on a vacation to Cabo San Lucas, with his now estranged new wife. You will find $14,000 in luxury jewelry purchases from Cartier. Furthermore, you will note that he has not paid the property taxes, nor has he paid a single dime toward the child's Oak Ridge Academy tuition since September, resulting in her expulsion. Judge Campbell's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. The silence in the courtroom was absolute, broken only by the sharp rustle of the paper. David's face flushed a deep, humiliating crimson. He stared at the table, refusing to look at me. "This is abhorrent," Judge Campbell finally said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. She fixed her gaze on David. "You sat in a mediation room and traded away your child's financial security for a sports car and jewelry for your mistress. You squandered $500,000 in less than a year, allowed your daughter to be expelled from her school due to your own negligence, and now you have the absolute gall to drag your ex-wife into this courtroom to demand she fund your continued financial incompetence? Your Honor, he is the primary custodian." Boyle started weakly. "Sit down, Mr. Boyle," the judge barked. "The petition for child support is denied. The lump sum of equity Ms. Sarah surrendered was more than adequate to support this child for years, had it not been treated like a lottery winning by the petitioner." "What about custody, Your Honor?" David pleaded, his voice cracking. "I work full-time. I can't be there every day at 3 o'clock to pick her up from the public school. Sarah has millions. She can hire a nanny. She can take her during the week." Judge Campbell looked at me. "Ms. Sarah, what is your stance on the custody modification?" I stood up slowly, meeting the judge's eyes with calm, unwavering respect. "Your Honor," I said, my voice steady and clear. "When my ex-husband demanded a divorce, he and his new partner engaged in a prolonged campaign of parental alienation. They convinced my daughter that I was a toxic, controlling burden because I enforced rules and boundaries. In the mediation room, my 10-year-old daughter looked me in the eye and stated she preferred to live with her father because he was fun and let her skip chores. I respected her autonomy. I stepped back to allow her father to be the primary parent he claimed he wanted to be. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle over the room. I love my daughter, but I am not a convenience store. I am not an on-demand babysitter to be utilized when the reality of parenting becomes too difficult for her father. I will not take physical custody back, nor will I alter my visitation schedule. David demanded sole custody. I expect him to execute the duties of that role. Judge Campbell studied me for a long moment. I knew she saw through the legal maneuvering. She saw a mother who had been pushed to the absolute edge and had chosen to survive rather than drown with a sinking ship. "The court finds no substantial change in circumstances that warrants a modification of the original agreed-upon custody order," Judge Campbell ruled, striking her gavel. "Petition denied in its entirety. Furthermore, Mr. David, I am ordering a visit from Child Protective Services to evaluate the habitability of your home, given the reports of utility shutoffs. Court is adjourned." David collapsed into his chair, burying his face in his hands. He was utterly, completely ruined. He had played his last card, and the house had won. The swift and absolute destruction of David's life was not a sudden explosion, but a slow, agonizing suffocation. By May, the massive suburban house was officially repossessed by Wells Fargo. I didn't have to hear it through the grapevine. I saw the foreclosure notice listed in the public county records while sipping my morning matcha in my penthouse. The eviction was a spectacle that the neighborhood would gossip about for years. Brenda, my former neighbor, practically salivated as she texted me play-by-play updates. The sheriff's deputies arrived on a Tuesday morning to physically escort David and Lily off the property. The golden retriever, Max, having grown entirely unmanageable and aggressive due to neglect, had to be surrendered to animal control. David was forced to stand on the curb next to a few garbage bags of their remaining clothes, waiting for a cheap moving van, while the bank changed the locks on the very doors he had once so smugly claimed as his kingdom. With his credit completely annihilated, David couldn't secure a lease in any decent neighborhood. He was forced into a cramped, severely outdated two-bedroom apartment in a dilapidated complex backing up to the interstate highway. The persistent roar of semi-trucks replaced the quiet chirping of suburban birds. As for Rachel, her karma arrived in a different, but equally humiliating package. She had fled to her sister's cramped apartment in Chicago, under the delusion that her youth and looks would quickly land her a wealthy savior. But she was 24, carrying the baggage of a highly publicized messy marriage and possessed zero marketable skills. When she attempted to sue David for spousal support, the judge actually laughed, pointing out that David was legally bankrupt and buried in child-rearing debts. In a moment of pure, unadulterated delusion, Rachel actually emailed me in late June. Subject: a favor between women. Sarah, I know we have our differences, but I am in a desperate situation. David lied to me about his finances, and I gave up the best years of my life trying to help him raise your daughter. I am currently working retail and can barely afford groceries. Given that your PR agency is booming, I was hoping you could offer me a junior consultant position, or at least a small personal loan to get me on my feet. Consider it back pay for the months I spent babysitting Lily. I didn't reply. I simply forwarded the email to my lawyer, Arthur, with a note that read, "Keep this for the archives. The audacity is truly a medical marvel." While they wallowed in the consequences of their deceit, my life was an unbroken upward trajectory. Vanguard PR won the prestigious Global Communications Award. I bought a small, beautiful summer villa in Tuscany, paid for in cash. I was vibrant, healthy, and completely free of the toxic stress that, in my previous life, had literally stopped my heart. But the most profound transformation was happening within Lily. Poverty and neglect are brutal, unforgiving teachers. In her new reality, there were no catered birthday parties, no elite gymnastics camps, and no golden retrievers. There was only the smell of stale beer, peeling linoleum floors, and a father who had completely given up. David, having lost his lucrative sales job due to chronic tardiness, was now working a miserable shift at a local call center. He came home exhausted, bitter, and angry. He drank cheap vodka and blamed Lily for everything. He blamed her for costing too much, for driving Rachel away, and for being the anchor that drowned him. The brainwashing evaporated. Stripped of the bribes and the fun dad facade, Lily finally saw David for the hollow, narcissistic shell he was, and she finally understood the agonizing sacrifices I had made to shield her from him. It happened on a blistering Tuesday afternoon in late August. I was reviewing a contract for a new Fortune 500 client when my head of security, Brian, buzzed my intercom. "Miss Sarah, your daughter is in the lobby. She doesn't have an appointment and she looks pretty distressed. Should I send her up?" I paused, laying my gold fountain pen on the mahogany desk. My pulse remained steady. "Send her in, Brian." When the heavy oak doors opened, the breath caught in my throat. Lily looked completely unrecognizable from the entitled, designer-clad girl who had sneered at me in the mediation room 14 months ago. She was wearing a faded, oversized t-shirt and a pair of badly scuffed sneakers. Her hair was unbrushed, and she looked desperately thin. But it was her eyes that struck me the most. They were hollow, haunted, and carrying an exhaustion no almost 12-year-old should ever know. She stood frozen on the threshold of my expansive sun-drenched office, taking in the gleaming awards, the expensive art, and the undeniable reality of the empire I had built without her father draining my resources. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking. I stood up slowly, smoothing my tailored skirt, and walked around the desk. I gestured to the plush leather sofa. "Sit down, Lily. How did you get here? You're supposed to be registering for classes at Harrison Heights today." "I took 3 different city buses," she admitted, sinking into the sofa as if her legs could no longer support her. "Dad was supposed to take me, but he was hungover and wouldn't wake up. I couldn't take it anymore." The dam broke. She folded in on herself, burying her face in her hands, and began to sob with a raw, agonizing intensity. It was the sound of a child mourning the death of their own innocence. "I'm sorry," she gasped, her small shoulders heaving. "Mom, I am so sorry. I was stupid. I was so stupid. Dad is horrible. The apartment is disgusting. There are bugs everywhere, and he hates me. He tells me every single day that I ruined his life. He said it's my fault you kept the business. He said it's my fault Rachel left." I sat in the armchair across from her, handing her a box of tissues. I didn't pull her into my arms. I let her feel the full weight of her confession. "I know," I said softly. "I see it now, Mom. I see everything you did. You weren't strict because you hated me. You were strict because you were holding everything together. Dad just wanted to play games, but he didn't want to actually take care of me." She looked up, her blue eyes red and swollen, begging for salvation. "Please, Mom. Please let me come live with you. I'll sleep on the floor. I'll clean the whole penthouse every day. I'll never ask for anything ever again. Just please, don't make me go back to that awful place. In the life I had lived before, this was the moment I would have shattered. I would have swept her up, spent millions on aggressive litigation to rip custody away from David, and spent the rest of my life trying to heal her trauma, ultimately dying of a broken heart while doing so. But the woman sitting in that armchair was reborn from the ashes of that exact mistake. I leaned forward, clasping my hands together. My heart ached for her, but my resolve was absolute steel. "Lily, look at me," I commanded gently. She sniffled, wiping her eyes, and met my gaze. "I love you," I said, my voice thick with genuine emotion but completely devoid of weakness. "I have always loved you, and my love for you is not conditional. I forgive you for what you said in the mediation room. You were a child, and your father manipulated you. But I need you to listen to me very carefully." She nodded frantically, desperate for a lifeline. "When you sat in that room and told the lawyers you wanted to live with your father because he was fun and I was a burden, you made a profound choice. You demanded a life without my rules, without my boundaries, and without my structure. I stepped back and gave you exactly what you asked for. I did not abandon you. I respected your autonomy." "But I was wrong!" she cried. "Yes, you were," I agreed calmly. "And the most difficult part of growing up is learning that we cannot simply undo the consequences of our actions just because we don't like how they feel. I am not going to petition the court to take you away from your father. He fought tooth and nail to claim he was the superior parent. He legally demanded the right to raise you. He has to carry that burden." Lily stared at me, the blood draining from her face. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. I wasn't going to save her. I wasn't going to be the magic eraser for her father's failures. You're making me go back? She whispered, terrified. I am, I said firmly. But you will not be alone. We will continue our every other weekend visitation. I will take you to dinner on Wednesdays. I will buy your school supplies and ensure you have warm clothes. I will be your mother, Lily, but my home is not an escape hatch from the life your father built for you. It's too hard there, she wept. Then you will learn to be resilient, I countered, my tone leaving no room for argument. You will learn the value of hard work. You will learn to budget, to clean, and to rely on yourself. Because clearly, your father cannot do it for you. You are going to learn how to survive, Lily, just like I had to. She sat there in silence for a long time. The tears slowly stopped. I watched the spoiled, entitled little girl die in that office, replaced by a young woman who was suddenly wide awake to the harsh, unforgiving realities of the world. She took a deep, shuddering breath, sitting up a little straighter. Okay, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but steady. Okay, Mom. Good. I smiled softly. Now, go wash your face in my private bathroom. I'll have Brian drive you to the school to register for your classes, and then I'll take you out for a proper dinner. As I watched her walk toward the restroom, a profound, heavy peace settled over my soul. The phantom tightness in my chest, the ghost of my fatal cardiomyopathy, was completely gone. The karmic wheel had spun its full rotation. David was a broken man trapped in a prison of his own making. Rachel was a cautionary tale working a cash register. And Lily was finally on the path to becoming a strong, independent woman who would never take her mother for granted again. I had been given a second chance at life, and I hadn't just survived it. I had mastered it. Have you ever sacrificed your health, your sanity, and your bank account for people who completely took you for granted? Have you ever fantasized about simply dropping the rope and letting them experience the brutal reality of life without your constant protection? Let me know down in the comments if you think my tough love approach with Lily was exactly what she needed, or if you would have caved and brought her into the penthouse. Karma never misses an address, and watching David and Rachel's toxic entitlement completely destroy them was the ultimate vindication. If this story resonated with you, or if you just love watching a manipulator get exactly what they ask for, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to set strong boundaries, and subscribe to the channel for more insane real-life drama and revenge stories. Until next time, remember, sometimes the best revenge is simply walking away.